Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. You're sitting across from him mid-conversation and suddenly he says something so vulnerable, so unexpectedly sincere that it catches you off guard and you wonder, was that a sign? See, love doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like a whisper, quiet but powerful, reshaping the entire landscape before you even notice it. And yet, most people miss the subtle cues, the gentle shift in his tone when he talks to you, the way he remembers the tiniest details you thought were meaningless, or how he starts making space for you in a life he once guarded like a fortress. Why does it matter? Because if you're not paying attention, you might walk away just before he's ready to run after you. Now, I'm not talking about guessing games or decoding mixed signals. We're diving into psychological truths, deep emotional behavior, and real human patterns. But let me ask you something. Ever noticed how his silence sometimes says more than his words? No? Good. Because by the end of this, you won't just see the signs. You'll feel them. And if you think you've got it all figured out already, well, what if you're wrong? When a man starts to fall in love, one of the clearest and yet most easily overlooked signs is that your happiness begins to matter more to him than his own convenience. It's not always loud or dramatic. It might be something as simple as staying up late just to talk to you after a long day, even though he's exhausted. It might be canceling a night out with his friends because you had a bad day and need someone to just sit in silence with. And the most powerful part, he doesn't complain about it. He doesn't make it about him. He just does it like it's the most natural thing in the world. This shift doesn't come from obligation, it comes from a place of deep emotional connection where your joy becomes a part of his own sense of fulfillment. You'll start to notice it in the small choices he makes, the ones that don't seem like a big deal to others, but reveal volumes about his emotional investment in you. Maybe he remembers you mentioned loving a specific kind of tea, and now he always keeps it stocked in his kitchen. Maybe he notices that you get overwhelmed in crowds, so he chooses quieter places when planning your time together. These aren't random acts, they're conscious decisions made with you in mind, even when it's not the easiest or most convenient route for him. And that's the difference between someone who likes you and someone who's slowly, maybe even unconsciously, falling in love with you. It's not just about sacrifice either, it's about emotional presence. There's a kind of attentiveness that love brings. He starts to observe you, not just look at you, but truly see you. He listens when you speak, not to reply, but to understand. When a man truly begins to care deeply, he develops a kind of emotional radar tuned specifically to your needs, even the unspoken ones. He starts picking up on your moods, noticing when you're quieter than usual, or when you fake a smile to keep peace. And then he acts. Sometimes that means giving you space. Other times it means showing up when you didn't even ask. But it always comes from the same place, a genuine desire to support you, even if it costs him his comfort. You might be tempted to dismiss these things. Maybe you think he's just being nice, or that's what people do when they care. But no, most people don't go out of their way unless there's something deeper growing. The man who chooses to show up, who makes inconvenient choices simply because he doesn't want to see you hurt or stressed, is showing something rare in today's world: emotional leadership. He may not say the words, "I love you" yet, but love is not just spoken, it's demonstrated in thousands of small, deliberate actions. Watch closely and you'll see them accumulate over time, forming a mosaic of his emotional evolution toward you. Now, some of these choices will go unnoticed. He might rearrange his schedule to accommodate yours, let you vent without offering solutions because he knows you just need to be heard, or stand up for you in situations where silence would be easier. These moments are not always big or cinematic. They won't make it into a romantic comedy, but they are deeply meaningful. Why? Because they require emotional investment and effort. They require him to step out of his own preferences and step into your world, not to fix it, but to share the weight of it. That kind of empathy, that quiet strength only comes when someone is slowly but surely surrendering to love. There's something deeply grounding about a man who begins to place your emotional well-being as a guiding compass in his life. He becomes more patient, more forgiving, and sometimes even more brave. He might open up about things he once buried simply because your trust makes him feel safe. That safety, that emotional sanctuary, is not built overnight. It's forged in the moments where he consistently chooses you, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And if you're watching carefully, you'll see a man reshaping his priorities, not with grand gestures, but with quiet reordering. He doesn't just fit you into his plans, he starts to build plans with you in mind. This doesn't mean he forgets himself or becomes someone else entirely. No, a man falling in love still holds on to who he is. But the difference lies in how he adapts, how he grows, and how he begins to stretch his emotional boundaries not for control, but for connection. You'll see it in the way he communicates, more intentional, more considerate. He begins to ask questions not just out of curiosity, but because he genuinely wants to know how your mind works, what makes you come alive, what scares you, what calms you. And when he listens, really listens, it's no longer just about gathering information, it's about understanding you on a soul-deep level. Even when he's tired, distracted, or going through his own challenges, there's a consistent thread that weaves through his actions. Asterisk, you matter. Your presence, your peace of mind, your smile, they carry weight in his world. It's not performative. He's not doing it to win points or to check boxes. He's doing it because somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, your happiness started to affect his own. Your laughter became music to his ears, and your silence became something he wanted to soothe, not escape from. He begins to feel responsible, not in a burdensome way, but in a deeply human way, as if the idea of you hurting feels personal, even if he had nothing to do with it. And that's when you know something real is happening, something irreversible, because convenience will always serve the self, but love, true, emerging love, starts to serve you asterisk, sometimes even when he's not ready to admit it out loud. When a man begins to open up emotionally, especially during his most vulnerable moments, it's not just a sign of trust, it's a powerful indicator that he's slowly falling in love. For many men, vulnerability doesn't come easily. It's often conditioned out of them from a young age, replaced with stoicism, silence, and a need to always appear in control. So when he starts to let that armor down around you, even in subtle ways, it's not just casual sharing, it's a deep emotional risk. It's his way of letting you into parts of himself that he normally keeps hidden from the world. And the truth is, he wouldn't do that unless something inside him believes that you're different, that you're worth the risk, that somehow with you, it's safe to be seen in full light even in his brokenness. It might begin slowly. Maybe he tells you a story from his childhood, one that still carries an emotional sting. Not because he needs pity, but because for some reason in your presence the memory feels less heavy. Or perhaps he shares a fear, something irrational or embarrassing, not to make himself the center of attention, but because the silence between you has grown so intimate that hiding anything feels dishonest. These moments often seem unplanned, even surprising to him. He might pause, look away, or even backtrack, unsure if he said too much. But make no mistake, those glimpses into his raw, unfiltered self are a doorway into his heart. He's not just talking, he's revealing. He's testing the depth of your understanding, hoping silently that you won't pull away. What's striking about these moments is how out of sync they can feel with the rest of your time together. One minute you're laughing over dinner, and the next he's telling you about the night he sat in his car for hours because he couldn't face going home. That contrast is not accidental. It's a pattern interrupt, his subconscious way of saying, asterisk, this isn't just fun anymore. You mean more to me than surface level connection. And when you respond with empathy rather than judgment, it changes something inside him. Suddenly, you're not just someone he enjoys spending time with. You become someone he trusts, someone he can lean on. And in that quiet exchange, love begins to take root, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the real, lasting kind that's built on emotional exposure and mutual safety. You might notice that he doesn't open up to others in the same way. Around his friends, he still jokes, shrugs things off, avoids depth. But with you, the mask slips. That's intentional, not calculated, but instinctive. Something in him begins to associate your presence with emotional freedom. You become the person he wants to call when life punches him in the gut. Not because he expects you to fix it, but because he doesn't want to face it alone. He might start using phrases like, I've never told anyone this before, or I don't know why I'm saying this to you. Those aren't just conversational fillers, they're clues. Clues that he's forming an emotional bond, one that's strong enough to override years of silence and self-protection. And when that vulnerability shows up, it's not always polished or articulate. Sometimes it comes out clumsy in fragments, maybe even in frustration. He might talk about his fears of failure, his insecurities about not being good enough, or the pressure he feels to always keep it together. These confessions are not meant to impress, they're honest. They're the kind of truth you don't tell unless you feel emotionally tethered to someone. And more often than not, those truths don't come with a neat resolution. He doesn't need advice. He doesn't need you to solve anything. What he's really saying is, asterisk, this is who I am when the world isn't watching. Can you still hold space for me? There will also be moments where he opens up in ways that catch even him off guard. Maybe he gets emotional during a movie, or something you say triggers a memory he hasn't thought about in years. And instead of shutting it down, he lets the moment happen. He lets you see him in his humanness, not the version of him that's confident and capable, but the version that's uncertain, nostalgic, maybe even afraid. That's where emotional intimacy is born. Not in grand gestures, but in the willingness to be imperfect in front of someone else. That willingness comes from love, or at the very least, the slow, steady formation of it. As this emotional openness deepens, you'll find that he starts to ask more meaningful questions too. Not just about your day or your plans, but about your fears, your wounds, your childhood. That's his way of mirroring the connection. If he's been brave enough to let you in, he wants to step into your world too. It's no longer about casual dating or surface attraction. It's about building something grounded, something emotionally real. And real love always requires vulnerability from both sides. There's a shift in how he responds to conflict too. Instead of withdrawing or deflecting, he starts to explain himself, not to defend, but to be understood. He wants you to know where he's coming from. He starts sentences with "I felt" instead of "you always," because he doesn't want to damage the connection. He wants to protect it. That emotional accountability, that willingness to bring his heart into the conversation even when it's difficult, is a powerful sign that he's not just emotionally invested, he's emotionally dependent in a healthy way. Your understanding of him becomes essential to his sense of peace. He doesn't just want to be with you, he wants to be known by you. When a man starts investing time in understanding your world, it signals a deeper shift in his emotional involvement, a quiet but unmistakable sign that his interest is growing into something more profound. It's not just about spending time together, it's about the quality of his attention, the way he leans into your life with curiosity, patience, and a desire to comprehend what shapes you, moves you, and matters to you. He begins to pay attention to your routines, your values, your past, and the subtle intricacies that make up your inner and outer worlds. This isn't for show, it's because something inside him is being pulled closer, slowly but surely, towards something that feels like home in your presence. You'll notice that he starts asking deeper questions, not to interrogate, but to connect. He doesn't just ask what your favorite movie is, he wants to know why you love it. He listens to the stories you tell about your childhood, about your family, about the moments that left invisible scars or unexpected joy. He wants to understand how you became who you are. He's not just listening for facts, he's listening for patterns, for meaning, for the emotional truth beneath your words. And he remembers. He remembers the things you said in passing, the names of people important to you, the things you care about even when you don't think anyone notices. That level of memory and care isn't casual, it's emotional investment. It's a man mapping your emotional landscape because he's considering what it would mean to walk that terrain with you long term. His effort begins to extend beyond conversations. He starts showing up for the things you care about, not because he's obligated, but because he wants to understand. If you have a passion for something he's unfamiliar with, he'll try to learn about it. If you're close to your family, he'll take time to observe how you interact with them, what role they play in your life. He may not always say the right things or even understand everything right away, but he's present. He's there. That presence, that consistent showing up, is not just physical, it's emotional labor. It's his way of saying, "I see you and I want to know more." And it doesn't stop at your interests. He also tries to understand your moods, your silences, your triggers. He starts to notice how you react under stress, what makes you light up and what makes you retreat. That emotional attunement isn't something that happens by accident. It's developed through intention. He's learning your rhythms, and not because he's trying to control them, but because he's trying to sync with them. He wants to be in harmony with you, not in conflict. That requires patience, and more importantly, it requires humility, the kind of humility that says, "I don't know everything about you yet, but I want to keep learning." You may catch him asking you about things you didn't even realize you shared. Maybe he brings up a book you mentioned once or a story about your best friend that stuck with him. Or maybe he simply asks how your day went, not out of politeness, but because he genuinely wants to understand the emotional backdrop of your life. Even when he doesn't have time, he finds time 5 minutes on a busy day to check in, a short call to hear your voice, a thoughtful text that connects to something you said before. These aren't tasks on a checklist, they're windows into his growing desire to be part of your emotional ecosystem. He begins to notice what makes you feel safe. He learns what kind of reassurance you need when you're insecure or what kind of space you crave when you're overwhelmed. And rather than imposing his own way of handling things, he adapts. He learns you not as a concept, but as a living, breathing experience. That adaptability, that willingness to shift in response to your emotional needs isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the kind of emotional maturity that says, I care about you enough to meet you where you are, even if it takes work. Sometimes this understanding shows up in how he defends you when you're not around, how he speaks about you to others, how he integrates you into his own life without making it feel forced. He doesn't just learn your world to impress you, he learns it to protect it, to respect it. That respect shows up in boundaries, in loyalty, and in the way he begins to move through life with you in mind. You're no longer a side story, you're part of the central narrative, and he's making room for your voice, your presence, your reality. Even in disagreements, you'll see his investment. He won't dismiss your feelings or shut down emotionally. Instead, he'll try to understand where you're coming from, even if he doesn't fully agree. That effort to listen, to make space for your perspective, reveals more than just communication skills, it reveals heart. It shows that your internal world matters enough for him to sit with discomfort and work through the tension. That's not a man who's playing games. That's a man who's emotionally engaging, brick by brick, with the complexity of your soul. And as this pattern deepens, you'll find that your world starts to blend with his, not through control, but through curiosity and care. He wants to introduce you to his world too, not as a test, but as an offering. Because in understanding your world, he begins to feel more connected, more anchored, more alive. It becomes a shared experience of learning, building, and growing, one where love is not a sudden fall, but a series of steady, intentional steps taken toward you day by day, moment by moment. When a man is slowly falling in love, one of the clearest yet most underrated signs is the quiet, consistent effort he puts in without asking for attention, applause, or validation. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about the steady reliability, the small but meaningful actions he repeats over time, even when no one is watching, even when it doesn't benefit him directly. He begins to show up in ways that are not flashy but deeply dependable. It might be remembering how you take your coffee, checking in when you've had a long day, helping with things you didn't even ask for, or supporting your goals without needing to be in the spotlight. These aren't favors, they're habits forming from care. They are unspoken proofs of emotional investment, and they grow stronger the deeper his feelings go. This kind of effort is often quiet and easy to miss. That's because he's not doing it for attention. He's not measuring his worth by how much you praise him. He's driven by something more intrinsic, by a desire to see you thrive, to make your life a little easier, to create space where you feel seen, valued, and safe. That level of consistency isn't a performance, it's a reflection of a mindset shift. Your well-being becomes part of his daily thinking. He begins to anticipate your needs, not because he's trying to impress you, but because he genuinely cares. That care transforms into action, and those actions become patterns. And within those patterns, love slowly starts to reveal itself. You might notice he checks in on your emotional state without being prompted. Not just when you're visibly upset, but even when your energy is slightly off. He sends messages not just to chat, but to remind you he's there. He'll remember details you didn't expect him to hold on to: your dentist appointment, your important work meeting, the anniversary of something you've lost. And he follows up, not for credit, but because he's thinking of you even when you're not around. That mental presence speaks volumes. It's not loud, but it's real. And it doesn't fade after the honeymoon phase, it gets stronger over time. There's something deeply grounding about someone who keeps showing up, not because he's told to, but because he chooses to. He doesn't need a reward or a thank you every time. He doesn't keep a scoreboard of what he's done for you. And that absence of ego is one of the strongest indicators that his emotions are genuine. He gives without keeping count. He supports you not only when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. He might drive across the city just to drop something off when you're sick, or stay up late helping you brainstorm ideas for your project, or stand by you quietly while you're figuring out your own mess. He's not always trying to fix things. He's just there over and over again. This consistency can sometimes feel almost invisible because it doesn't demand attention. It just is asterisk. But that's the magic of it. His presence becomes a kind of emotional reliability that you grow to lean on, not out of dependency, but out of mutual trust. He becomes the kind of person who texts not just, "How are you?" but "How did that thing go?" He remembers, he notices, he cares. And he does it without expectation. That's the kind of effort that builds love, not the fireworks, but the flame that doesn't go out, no matter the weather. You'll see it in how he handles hard times too. When conflict arises, he doesn't run. He stays in the conversation, works through the discomfort, and listens more than he speaks. He doesn't just put in effort when things are going well, he doubles down when things get complicated. He may not have all the right words, but his actions say, "I'm here, I'm still choosing you." That resilience, that emotional endurance is another kind of quiet effort that often gets overlooked. It's not glamorous, it's not always easy, but it's real, and it's rare. He might never mention the sacrifices he makes. He might never bring up the way he adjusted his schedule for you or how he changed his plans just to make sure he could be there. That's because his intention isn't to be praised, it's to be useful, to be supportive, to be someone you can rely on without having to ask twice. He doesn't need a spotlight to feel valued. The connection he's building with you is the reward. He finds fulfillment in your smile, in your success, in your peace. That kind of love isn't loud, it's stable, steady, and deeply rooted. And as this consistency builds, you begin to notice a shift in yourself too. You start to feel more relaxed, more at ease, more open. You're no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop because he's shown you time and again that he's not going anywhere. That emotional safety is a byproduct of his unwavering effort. And while others might bring intensity, drama, or passion that burns out, he brings a kind of devotion that only grows stronger in the background. Over time, his efforts accumulate into something undeniable, not because he asks for recognition, but because consistency speaks louder than promises. Anyone can say the right thing in the moment, but someone who shows up day after day, who thinks of you when it's inconvenient, who helps without being asked, who holds space for your growth, even when it challenges him, that's someone whose love is not just forming, but maturing. And in the absence of noise or need for applause, his quiet effort becomes the loudest truth of all.